Well, I'm very pleased this afternoon, as I said, to welcome a long friend of mine and someone who I deeply admire, Harold Cassidy, who is one of the most well-known and talented litigators in the pro-life movement. Harold has been involved in pro-life litigation and the larger practice of the law for over 45 years. Harold, let's go ahead and get right into it. So the Supreme Court made some big news this past Monday when they announced that they will take up the case involving the Mississippi abortion law that prohibits abortion on unborn children at 15 weeks. Many are suggesting that the court is now configured to overturn Roe v. Wade. You know, what comes next if the court upholds the right of the state of Mississippi to regulate abortion down to 15 weeks? It seems to me that one of the next questions will be under what terms will it eventually overturn Roe altogether, or to essentially revamp the entire abortion landscape in this country. You, in particular, have long been an advocate of policies and strategies that have put women's interests first. Can you help explain why this is important, especially as we look potentially ahead and past this decision on Mississippi?
The burden is on us to show the court a new interest that they haven't heard before, that explains to them why and how they can rectify the errors that they made. The mother's rights becomes critical here. In Casey said, Roe may have been an error, but the error of Roe only went to the weight to be given to the state's interest in fetal protection. It did not go to the woman's liberty. That's one of the great errors of Casey's analysis. We have in the law a great number of cases that deal with the rights of mothers with respect to their relationship with their children. You know, one of the reasons that I focus on this, 40 years ago, women started coming to me because they were being forced to give their babies up to adoption. These are women who wanted their children. Can you imagine what it's like for a mother who wants a child who's being forced to separate? When it came to me, it was a special kind of pain that I was witnessing. I took some cases, and when they came to me soon enough, when the child was young enough, and I could prove the facts, I could get the babies back. That led to women being sent to me in surrogacy cases. And of course, the Baby M case was the first contested surrogacy case. But then women started coming to me because they're being forced to have abortions. And I couldn't get their babies back for them because the people who violated their rights killed the babies. Now, this is one of the holes in the way that the pro-life community and the states in particular have been presenting the pro-life issue. Abortion is not the exercise of a right. Abortion is one method of terminating and waiving the most important intrinsic fundamental right that a mother has in all of life other than maybe her own right to live. Think about all the protections that we have in the law in adoption to ensure that it is voluntary, to ensure that it is informed. Only a court can terminate her rights. But what the Supreme Court has done with abortion is they've allowed people to force women to have abortions, drag them into abortion clinics, and there is no court to protect them. There is no hero. It's an abortion doctor in a clinic that has a philosophy that will not allow them to protect the rights of these women. So that experience, that right has to be presented to the court, in my judgment. Now, there are other cases too that can come along as a next case after Mississippi. If the Mississippi statute is upheld, we have to wait to see exactly how the court reasons to it. If they make some new rules of law, which is highly likely, we have to see what they are. But in my judgment, speaking for myself, I think that there is a good chance that there'll have to be a second case before Roe v. Wade is overturned to the point where a state has the authority to prohibit all abortions, with perhaps a couple exceptions.
You are currently defending a pregnancy help center in South Dakota. This is a case that Catholic Vote is helping sponsor as well. You intervened on behalf of this crisis pregnancy center in South Dakota to defend a state law that Planned Parenthood sued and challenged. Can you tell us a little bit about this case? Because certainly looking ahead, this is a case now that may soon be up in the Eighth Circuit Court of Appeals. This, among other cases, as you suggest, may be poised to be that second case to finally overturn Roe.
So there's a history there in South Dakota. The court determined that the statute's requirement that a doctor disclose to a woman that abortion will terminate the life of a whole, separate, unique, living human being was upheld because of a statement of scientific fact. It was relevant to the mother's decision, and it was a truthful statement of scientific fact. Okay? The current statute is one that, in my judgment, directly implicates Casey's undue burden standard, among other things. It requires a whole bunch of things, which I won't go into details in, but the current part of the case is focusing on what we call the mandatory third-party counseling, that it protects the mother's right to a relationship with her child, because there's a preliminary question: can I and should I keep my relationship with my child? Before if a mother were to decide that she had to give the baby up, the question of how she terminates that relationship is a different question. And so the statute requires the doctor to send every woman to the registered pregnancy help center, highly regulated, only licensed counseling, but limited to coercion and pressure, limited to what help she needs, financial, non-financial, public, private, discussions about the human being disclosure and the relationship disclosures. That statute is enjoined right now as to that one provision. All the other provisions in the statute, the preliminary injunction has been lifted. So that particular case implicates the question that I mentioned before. Is an abortion really the exercise of a right, or is it simply one method that terminates, or a method to waive one of the most important, what the court has called an intrinsic, fundamental right of the mother to a relation, to keep her child, keep her relationship with the child. So that case is in the courts. You are correct. It probably will be in the Eighth Circuit shortly.
Harold, you just mentioned the large number of women that you have counseled or have represented legally, including some that have filed declarations both in the South Dakota case that you're handling and other cases. You and I have talked over the years about the powerful impact of these stories. Perhaps you could share one or two stories for our listeners today to understand really what I would say is the shameful, dark secrets of what abortion is really about in this country.
One of our experts, let me start by telling you this. One of our experts has documented 90 instances in which women were murdered because they refused to have an abortion. The women who weren't murdered, if you heard the stories, some of them would bring tears to your eyes. Women whose boyfriends they were living with, who forced them to leave the house, and they had to sleep in the winter, in the cold, in cars, until the woman gave in to come out of the cold. George Zally, the father of a 20-year-old woman, 20-year-old college student, who he found hanging from her ceiling fan, and later found out, not having even known that she was pregnant, not having known that she had an abortion, found out that she was forced to have an abortion by her college boyfriend's father. Those stories go on and on and on. They're a dirty secret.
Yeah, it's very, very encouraging to know that the tragic stories that we hear are finally making their way into the courts, thanks to attorneys like yourself who are gathering these declarations and giving women the platform to finally tell the truth about what abortion is really doing to women in this country. On behalf of all of us at Catholic Vote, I want to especially thank our Champions members, our Champions Club. The Champions really do make all of our work possible, including this webinar and the work of Harold, as well as all the other work that Catholic Vote is doing. Of course, I'd be remiss if I didn't also invite those that are not champions to consider becoming a champion today. You can do so on our website, $10 a month. It really is the foundation of all the work that we're doing. So thank you to all our champions. Thank you to all of you for joining us today, and may God bless you and your families.